Hello? Hello, Steve?
Hi, Travis?
Yeah, this is him.
Hey, Steve from Atheist. How are you?
I'm very great. I can't describe how happy I am to be talking to you right now.
Oh, well, thank you. It's my pleasure, actually.
All right, that's great. That's great. Can I start off the interview then?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Okay. It seems like a lot of bands are signing the Season of Mist. Do they treat you guys well?
Yeah, I mean, they have. I mean, it's because they were. Michael, the owner, has been a big fan of Atheist for a long time, and they were quite persistent in their pursuit of us to do a new record, which we sort of steadfastly refused to do for forever, until we finally relented and decided we would do it. And I think every single band complains about their label on some level, but overall they've done a wonderful job. The artwork or the production, the digipack and the way that they produced everything was really, I think, top notch. It's one of the, personally, I think one of the prettiest looking pieces of music. One of the prettiest looking packages I think we've had, and they're very attentive. They're very interested in the success of the record. They really love the record. They were we sent it to them after we got out of the studio, and like 24 hours later, the owner of the label, Michael, called and he said it's one of the best things you guys have ever done, and one of the best sounding records we've had at the label. And so they've been very, very supportive and very intent on seeing the record become a success. There are some realities in the music business now, with CD sales, and the model is shifting with to digital, and and I think record labels struggle a bit, and distribution struggles, and CD sales struggle somewhat as a result. But the digital downloads are taking up that slack, and it's been a good experience so far. They're headquartered in France, so that takes a bit of doing to overcome the time difference and some of the cultural differences that we've experienced. But all in all, I'd say it's been a great ride, and they've treated us wonderfully.
Oh, that's great. And people seem to think of Cynic when you guys come to mind. And now that you're label mates, do you see Atheist and Cynic touring together anytime soon?
Well, we grew up together, those guys and us. I mean, we've known each other for 20 plus years, and we grew up in Florida together, and we've been friends since we were kids. And people do often mention Atheist and Cynic in the same breath. And Atheist was several years before. I mean, our first album came out when, before I think their demos were released, and but we do often get mentioned along with sort of Pestilence and several bands from the era who were credited with sort of being the forerunners of the technical metal thing. We often get lumped together, even though we're quite different, I think, stylistically. But and we've talked at length about touring together, and we want to do it. They want to do it. There's been some heavy requests by promoters and venues and so forth to tour together, but so far it's just been a question of timing and logistics and our album being ready or not being ready, and they're in the middle of touring or not. Or also Cynic is moving away from the more aggressive sort of death metal world where Atheist still lives. They've gone much more into this sort of progressive world that since doing Focus, and I think deliberately they have a desire to get away from all that. And that doesn't mean we won't play together. It just means we're trying to find a time and a place to do so. We do so at festivals. Like last year, we played in the Czech Republic at the Brutal Assault Festival together. And again, we've talked about touring, but it's hard. It's really, really hard to make those things happen. There's just so many moving parts to it, and we really want to, and they want to. So hopefully, maybe sometime in the coming year, you'll see us play a run of shows together.
I really hope so. Do you think Atheist had any part in Chuck Schuldiner's decision to make Death shift kind of towards more like a progressive metal type of thing?
Yeah, very interesting question, and you're one of the first people to ever ask it in that way. Oftentimes it's asked the other way, like was Atheist influenced somehow by what Chuck did? And we have tremendous respect for Chuck, and we had but we had a rough go back in the day, and he on several occasions went out of his way to disparage Atheists and talk bad about us. We had played together a couple of times, and he went and told a bunch of people who were, really, who had a lot of say as to whether or not Atheists would ever see the light of day. He told them we were a train wreck. They don't know what they're doing. They're not metal, et cetera, et cetera. But eventually, yes, no question about it, that if Cynic came around, and when Paul Masvidal and Sean Reiner joined that band, he all of a sudden was there. It was a radically different band. I mean, and it was technical and just so well done. Chuck's guitar playing and the riff writing didn't really change, but all of a sudden the rhythm section and the guitar playing was so brilliant because of who he had playing drums and guitar before were really quite simple players. And it was a different band, and it was without question, Chuck could see writing on the wall that, a lot of the buzz was coming around, was going around the sort of technical metal movement. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't for Atheist, he never would have known about Cynic. Paul and Sean never would have been in his band, and that would have been a much different entity. Then, because from there you got Gene Hoglan, you got Richard Christie, you got Steve DiGiorgio, you've got so many of these guys that were just brilliant players that radically changed his sound and made it really technical where it wasn't before. And so, in a long-winded way, I'm answering your question to say yes, Chuck was absolutely influenced by Atheist, and it was for that reason that he had Sean and Paul in his band in the first place.
Oh, wow. Well, where do the elements of fusion come from in the band's material? Would it be safe to say that you're a fan of Billy Cobham from the Mahavishnu Orchestra?
Oh, yeah, without question. And a lot of people like him. But I would say that probably, and I can't really take credit for it. I often tell people what I did was take what Neil Peart did in Rush, and I put it to death metal. And it was only because I tried to emulate him so much, and I thought it would be really cool if you had like a really heavy, fast riff, and behind it, I'm doing some Rush kind of drum rhythm, Rush-inspired drum rhythm. I thought, boy, that would be that's a real cool marriage, and it allows me to pay homage to Neil Peart at the same time. Mm-hmm. And there are also a lot of other influences at play too. Cobham and people like that, Dave Weckl and of course Peart and Steve Gadd and Steve Smith and a lot of these guys who had such an amazing approach, but they also they were playing drumming in a style of music where it fit. Like Dave Weckl played in a very modern jazz band and a very modern jazz style of drumming. Whereas I think where Atheist gets a lot of credit and gets a lot of there's a lot of buzz about it and talk over the years was we took a lot of that. I took a lot of that style of drumming and just put it to what are, oftentimes quite simplistic heavy metal riffing, and it creates this layered sound that, is coming from all over. The other part of it is, too, we all come from such different places musically, and we all find a way to put it together. Kelly is much more into, sort of heavy stoner rock and Led Zeppelin and Sabbath, and I've always been much more into, bands like Rush and also early, Slayer and Metallica, and I've always had a much heavier bent. And our other guys, I remember when Roger was alive, he was the same way. He was into much more aggressive music than I was or Kelly was, and we all kind of put it together. And so you came up with this sound because there were so many influences in the band that needed to be heard, because Roger was such an amazing bass player. He had to be able to sort of speak musically speaking. Mm-hmm. And I would write stuff to that. And Kelly, in a lot of cases, the guitars couldn't necessarily play what Roger played on the bass, so they would have to play some harmony that floats over the top. And so what was born was that sound. I think the song I Deny on our album Piece of Time was one of the first applications where I had developed this drum double bass thing that I learned from Gene Hoglan, who was also a big influence on my playing back in his Dark Angel days.